Okay, Chair, we are now broadcasting.
Lovely, thank you very much, William. All right, so good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your patience this morning, putting up with some technical difficulties at the start. Welcome to this virtual licensing subcommittee meeting, which is being conducted with members, officers, and members of the public at various locations, communicating via audio, video, and online. There's also the opportunity for the public and press to listen and view the proceedings. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to confirm that members and officers are in attendance.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live onto YouTube and recorded via Zoom. I'll undertake a roll call, so when your name is called, please could you indicate your attendance to confirm that you are present and can hear and be heard. Panel, Councillor Elizabeth Dennis-Harburg.
Here.
Councillor Richard Thake.
Here.
Councillor Mike Rice.
Present.
And Reserve Member Councillor Tom Tyson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Officers, Teresa Campion.
I'm here, yes.
Thank you. Molly Shields.
I'm here.
William Edwards.
Present.
And I'm Anna Gavea, and with representations, Ms. Melanie Lee.
Yes, I'm here.
And Kuljit Sangha from the police.
Present.
And Jonathan Vine, police.
Yeah, I'm here.
And representing the premises, Mr. Kieran Paul.
Present.
And Mr. Sydney Austin.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. Extracts from the remote and partly remote meetings protocol are included with the agenda, and the full version is available on the Council's website, which includes information regarding live streaming, noise interference, rules of debate, voting and Part 2 items. Members are requested to ensure that they are familiar with the protocol. The hearing preliminary, which details the arrangements for the hearing, has been uploaded to the internet as a supplement to the agenda, and I'll just run through this briefly. The subcommittee consists of 3 voting members with a 4th non-participating member listening to the hearing. In the event that a voting member loses connection, the hearing will adjourn until connection can be restored. If the adjournment exceeds 10 minutes, or it is apparent sooner that reconnection will not be possible, the 4th member will replace the absent member and become a voting member of the subcommittee. If a quorum of 3 members that have been present throughout the hearing is not possible, the hearing will be adjourned. In the event that the applicant loses connection, the hearing will adjourn until connection can be restored. If it becomes apparent that reconnection will not be possible, the hearing will be adjourned to a stated date. In the event that the responsible authority loses connection, the hearing will adjourn until connection can be restored. If it becomes apparent that reconnection will not be possible for them, the hearing will be adjourned to a stated date. If the responsible authority has completed their presentation and closing statement before losing connection, the chair may decide to continue with the hearing. And the decision, the subcommittee will undertake their deliberations in private, and the aim is that they will return to announce their determination on the live stream. However, they will not wait until all parties are connected. A copy of the decision will be forwarded to all parties electronically as soon as practicable, and will be able to be viewed on the Council's YouTube recording of the meeting and uploaded to the Council's website. If having retired, members believe that the deliberations for a decision will take too long, to avoid parties waiting, they may decide not to announce it live on the day. If this is the case, an announcement will be made to this effect and the meeting will be closed. The decision would then be announced in writing within 5 working days of the meeting. Are there any questions on any of that before we start the meeting? Thank you. I'll now hand over to the Chair, Councillor Dennis-Harburg. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, so before I get into running through the general procedure and flow for things today, just a courtesy notice and some things that we've observed previously to help these meetings run more smoothly. If you're not speaking, if you're able to, please mute yourself, just because that reduces feedback, etc. If you're on a computer, you can hit the space bar or whatever. There's usually the mic symbol that you can click on. Thank you very much. And again, sort of when you're called to give evidence or respond to questions, don't get flustered or stressed about unmuting yourself. I will allow plenty of time. We've all gone through these sorts of Zoom meetings for quite some time now, and we know how frustrating the technologies can be. So please relax, and I'll do my best to help and to assist you all. Okay, so we've been asked today as a subcommittee to review the premises licence for the Jockey in Royston. How things are going to work. We've had the sort of welcome and the introduction of sort of everybody in general, but just to run through that again, I'm Councillor Elizabeth Dennis-Harburg. I'll be chairing the subcommittee today, and I will be assisted by Councillors Mike Rice and Richard Thake. And should we have technical issues, Councillor Tom Tyson will step in as a reserve member. Our legal advisor is Teresa Campion, and our licensing officers helping us today are Anna Guevara and Molly Shields. We'll also be hearing from somebody who's quite coldly, in my opinion, called an other person who has instigated this review, and that's Miss Melanie Lee. So she's the person who's applied for this review of the premises licence and who I might refer to as the applicant at times. And we will also hear from our responsible authority, which is Hertfordshire Constabulary. And also, we don't have any representations from the premises licence holder, which is Yindi Thai Limited, or the designated premises supervisor, which is Kushmal Chiablam. But I'm aware that we have two other persons in the form of Kieran Paul, who's the bar manager at the Jockey, and Austin Sidney, who's his boss at the pub, who wish to make some representations sort of from the licensee, well, on behalf of the pub, but I can't necessarily say whether they're on behalf of the licence holder. Okay, so firstly, we will have a report from our licensing officer, and we can ask questions of the licensing officer. So that process will be for Ms. Lee to ask questions of the licensing officer based on their report. The police may ask questions, and then the other person, so Mr. Paul and Mr. Sidney, may ask licensing officer questions. After we've had the licensing officer's report, we'll turn to Ms. Lee to present sort of her case and explain why she's sought this review of this licence. We've got the documents and the applications that everyone has submitted. So if you'd like to sort of layer on additional detail and further draw out points for the committee, that would be useful. And we then may also obviously ask questions sort of in that same kind of order. So the police may ask questions of fact, and the other persons on the side of the pub may ask questions of fact of Ms. Lee, as well as the subcommittee members. The responsible authorities will make their submissions. So the police will put forward obviously their case. I think they've suggested a number of potential conditions as well, which they might wish to set out. And again, Ms. Lee can ask the police questions of fact, and also Mr. Paul, Mr. Austin can ask questions of fact, and then the subcommittee will ask questions of fact. And we have no licence holder to submit the case, but usually I think when we have cases like this, the other persons wishing to speak on behalf of the licence holder may make submissions. So I think I would allow Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin to make sort of a submission and a response to the review application. And again, questions of fact can be asked of those two individuals as well by everyone present and by the subcommittee. And then after we've heard everybody's submissions, we'll have closing statements from the licensing officer, the police, Ms. Lee, and Mr. Paul and Mr. Sidney. The legal advisor will give sort of a submission of an analysis of any legal points that have arisen, and we'll close the hearing at that point to sort of go and weigh things up and reach our decision about this particular review application. And then, as Anna's explained, depending how long it's going to take, we'll come back and deliver it, or we may sort of do things a little bit later on. Okay, lovely. So in that case, I know I've run through that very quickly and there's a lot going on there, but I'll manage it and hold everyone's hand through the process. So can I now hand over to our licensing officer? Oh wait, sorry, no, I don't want to hand over to the licensing officer yet. I always forget this one, terribly sorry. Can I ask our legal advisor to outline the matters for consideration during the course of the hearing, please?
You just need to unmute your microphone, Teresa, please. Thank you.
The matters of consideration. This is a review of a premises licence under section 55 of the Licensing Act 2003. The subcommittee have the following options when considering review. They can take no action. They can modify conditions on the premises licence and timings. They can exclude a licensing activity. They can remove the designated supervisor, and they can suspend the premises licence for a period of up to 3 months, or they can revoke the licence. But for whatever decision they make, they're obliged to take into consideration everything that's been said by all parties, and the the council's statement of licensing policy 2021, and the statutory guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. They're obliged to give full reasons for their decision, as there is a right to appeal to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days of the written decision being given. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Teresa. Okay, so without further ado, can I ask our licensing officer to present her report, please?
Good morning, Chair. There are no amendments to the published report. However, I do have several comments that are relevant to today's hearing. This is an application to review the existing premises licence of the Jockey Public House. This is an application by a local resident for the review of a premises licence due to an issue at the premises adversely affecting the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee are to take no action, as it believes that the premises licence adequately promotes the licensing objectives. To amend the licence, either by amending licensable activities, timings, existing conditions, or by imposing additional conditions. To remove the DPS. To suspend the licence for a period of up to 3 months to allow for time for necessary measures to be put into place to resolve the issues. And finally, to revoke the premises licence if it is felt that no amendments or conditions will adequately promote the licensing objectives. As documented in my report, at the time of publish, no contact had been received from the licence holder or the DPS in relation to this matter or the premises in general. This remains the case today. All methods of contact have been explored and exhausted by the licensing officer, but have been to no avail. This is an unusual situation and is concerning that the premises licence holder and the DPS have ignored all communication requests and correspondence. It is for the panel to apportion what weight they feel appropriate when considering for this review, and the responsibility of the premises licence holder and the DPS to ensure that licence conditions are complied with. This said, today the premises are represented by Mr. Kieran Paul and Mr. Sidney Austin. They have presented themselves as the current management of the premises. The panel may explore the manager's position in this business and seek clarification on fact only. The panel may also hear how the management are proposing to run the premises. However, the management cannot commit to agreeing to conditions or amending the existing licence on the behalf of the licence holder. As for the reasons already mentioned, the licence holder is not present in this case. Whilst the current management team may be liable in their own right for any licence breaches, ultimately the premises licence holder and the DPS are the main points of contact for enforcement action. It is suggested that the subcommittee explore the relationship between Mr. Paul, Mr. Austin and the premises licence holder to determine whether or not it has confidence in any actions resulting from today's hearing being implemented. Additionally, should the subcommittee be convinced that the current premises licence holder are no longer involved in the premises, does the subcommittee have any concerns that another change of management may not have the same thoughts as Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin, resulting in further problems? It may be that, should the subcommittee believe that there are problems at the premises caused by the absence of the licence holders and DPS, revocation would be appropriate in order to allow Mr. Austin and Mr. Paul to submit a new application in their names, which would be subject to the normal application process. It should be remembered that the premises is currently closed to lockdown restrictions. Therefore, requiring a new application would not unduly impact the ability for the premises to trade. The applicant for this review, Miss Lee, would like to present 4 images and 2 videos of the sound associated with the disturbances. Unfortunately, due to technical issues, Miss Lee will be presenting some of these from her phone. I can certify that the images and videos have been checked by the licensing officer, but as the licence holder is not present, he has not seen these. In addition, as the jockey is represented by Mr. Kieran Paul and Mr. Austin, I feel it is appropriate then for them to see these images and videos as part of Miss Lee's submission. And finally, yesterday evening, Miss Lee emailed a late submission relating to conditions that she felt would be appropriate should the committee decide to impose conditions. Due to the timing of this, Miss Lee has been advised to present her views during her oral submissions today. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much, Molly. So if I could first take any questions of fact based on the licensing officer's report from Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, really. I suppose just could you just confirm, Ms. Shields, that you've been obviously you said you've been attempting to contact the licence holder, the DPS, for some time, and there's been absolutely no response.
Yes, that's correct.
Has anybody ever met the licence holder, of which you're aware, in the last few years? Or can you not?
I have met the licence holder in 2018, yeah.
And was that on the premises?
It was, yes.
Okay. Right. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Okay, and then could I ask if Hertfordshire Constabulary have any questions for the licensing officer?
No, not at this time, thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. And could I ask Mr. Paul, and I'm very sorry, Mr. Austin, I was calling you Mr. Sidney earlier, whether you have any questions for the licensing officer? You're on mute still, Mr. Austin. There you go.
Yeah, say again. Hello. Yeah, the licence holder and our DPS is not to go abroad on an urgent matter.
Okay, I think we'll note that. I don't think the licensing officer needs to respond. That seemed like a statement of fact rather than a question. But thank you very much. That helps us to get that on record now. Okay, so members of the panel, do you have any questions for our licensing officer?
Not at this time, Chair.
And none from Councillor Fake. Okay, and I've got none either, so I think Molly is very lucky today. I say that every time, don't I? I think you are generally quite lucky not to have questions from councillors. Lovely. So in that case, could I ask Ms. Lee, whenever you're ready to present your submissions?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Well, I believe you've probably read the representation that I sent through initially. Is that correct? If you could all just sort of nod. So I don't want to repeat myself and take up too much time. I'd like to start by saying that actually I'm not one of these people that doesn't think that there should be public houses, etc., etc. And this is not a personal issue at all against the Jockey Pub. However, I bought my property in 2014. The public house was never opened at all for any purpose until just before lockdown, when it opened as a cafe bar. And I went, and it was pleasant, and there was a gentleman called Bob who was running it and had wonderful plans for the place. It then closed down and then reopened for maybe 3 to 4 weeks, I believe, in October through to perhaps, I think, the end of November, beginning of November, I'm not sure. And that's when all of these issues arose. I I had no contact whatsoever from the jockey owners, pub management, to tell me they were going to open the pub. Suddenly one day the sign went up and the next day the pub was open. Nobody's ever been around to speak to me or any other residents to explain what they intend to do with the place, exactly what they're planning on doing. It's an old coaching inn of the sort of Dick Turpin variety. And my property used to be some of the rooming part of the coaching inn. So you have the public house, and then you have a few rooms, which is a house of multiple occupations. They have tenants in there, I believe, pleasant people. There's the whole of the back area, which is sort of their big car park, and the bit they're now using is a beer garden and land beyond. And directly parallel to that is my garden and my house, and we're separated by about, I think, 4 feet. But the actual gardens run completely parallel. So really, my difficulty is that, first of all, I never know what's going to be happening, and secondly, they've placed all of the tables where they encourage people to sit and drink in the garden completely next to the slatted fence. There's about 4 feet between my patio and the beer garden. They have an enormous amount of space beyond that next to the fire station, which is used for their personal reasons for car parking. Nothing wrong with that, apart from the fact that when the pub was open, it was never open for patrons to use as a car park. The gates were always locked. So any patrons arriving immediately parked outside my house and my neighbours' houses and were picked up from there. So effectively, when the beer garden became licensed, it was then, when it was being used completely parallel to my garden. Collections and people arriving were done basically outside my house. On the nights in question when there was issues, there was people spilling out onto the road, gathering under my front window and standing actually in my doorway, because one of the patrons who attended, I know quite well, he's a young chap. We won't go into the age issue, but we all know there was underage drinkers, but I think they're going to try and address that. But he was a young chap who knows one of my sons and said, I felt so sorry for you all because I saw 6 people standing in your doorway, banging on your door, drinking out of bottles. And I'm going to play you the noise that emanated just from people being collected. I'm sorry to have to do it this way, but as I think Molly's very ably explained, it was not going to work any other way. So just let me know if you can hear this. Right.
Excuse me, Miss Lee and Chair, we do have the video. Is that what you're trying to play now? Because we do have that available.
Oh, well, I'll just play. No, this is the one I believe you don't have. You have the other video the night the police arrived. This is just another night. This is what it was like on every night, just about. Here we go. Did you hear that?
Yes, we heard that. Thank you very much. And I'll apologise to anyone who made out the language on the recording.
Sorry, yes, I'm sorry. That was from inside my house. That was from my bedroom upstairs on the first floor of my house with the window closed. So this is why I brought the review. I don't object necessarily to pubs at all. I just want a well-run establishment that speaks to local residents, that aids the community, doesn't exploit the community. People were just being allowed to go and buy whatever they liked and leave in whatever condition they liked, carrying bottles, standing in the road. Part of the reason I was concerned was because there was lots of young people standing in what is effectively the A505 drinking. And of course the noise, my son's bedroom is directly adjacent to the beer garden, so he could hear all of that, and he has exams. Well, who knows? He was due to have exams this year. He had some other ones cancelled earlier in the year, so you know. And I just want to live in a community that cares about people. I mean, I do voluntary work in the community. Not that that's relevant, but it does matter to me that the public house next door to me is operating on a 10-year-old license with held by someone, frankly, I've never seen, and by people who seem to just drift in and out and use it as an opportunity to make money when they can. I don't want to get personal here, but I do want there to be adequate conditions. So what I was going to ask for, I put in my initial reps, but I'll be brief, was for the beer garden to close at 9 p.m. All drinking to be stopped at 9 p.m. in the beer garden, any smoking to be stopped. And if people go out to smoke, only a few people at a time, for there to be door supervisors. I think the whole of the area needs door supervision if that's going to be the sort of thing that carries on outside the pub. So there were, basically, I think on the night in question, there was just, I think it may well have been Mr. Paul, I don't know, one bar person on the premises. There was nobody guarding, checking the entrance or exit. There was no sign saying, please respect the neighbours. On other nights, separate to that night, there was people urinating across the road. There's a grass verge on the other side of the road, urinating in public, for which they could have been arrested. Clearly a bit drunk, didn't know what they were doing. People just wandering. There was somebody standing. I could hear them from my kitchen, because my kitchen diner, someone standing in the beer garden threatening to bottle people. I'm going to throw this bottle at you, mate, because you dropped my beer, going on and on and on. And this was not the night of the massive fight, when, of course, police arrived and there was just chaos. So what I'm asking for, with all respect, is a properly run premises that we can trust to be in the interest of the community, not against the interests of the community. One final little point, there's also a big light they have turned on for the beer garden, which dazzles my back garden. So I'd ask them to dim that or change the direction. That's a slight side issue, but I suppose you'd call it light nuisance. I don't really want to go into any more detail because I've put everything down, but I'm a family. My next door neighbours, whose garden also runs adjacent to mine and therefore is only feet away from the beer garden, are legally blind. And there's other people, there's basically 3 houses that used to form part of the coaching inn, and all of us have been impacted. The others haven't made representations. It's quite a scary thing to do, but they're fearful too of having their summer ruined and their evenings ruined and their homes invaded. And just as a final point, yes, I have put my house up for sale because I can see no end to this unless strict conditions and some accountability is brought to bear. And again, please don't take this personally, Mr. Austin or Mr. Paul. It's not about you, it's about how you run your premises. Would anybody like to ask me anything at this stage?
I'm sure members will have questions for you, absolutely. The first people I need to come to you and ask for, if they have any questions, are Herts Constabulary.
Certainly, I've heard the reports of what's happened at the incidents at the pub. I apologise, I've not done one of these meetings before, so I don't know how much opportunity we get to talk, but certainly listen to all of that. My overriding view is that I do not want a pub like this to develop in the town. We've, over the last 10 years, created a really good, safe town to work in, or to drink in, to socialise in, and I certainly don't want to go back to a decade ago when we had similar problems. We don't have the capacity to deal with it, and that's one of the other considerations I want to make, is that we're under massive stress at the moment with policing, and I can't take on a problematic venue.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, John, I'm going to be moving to you and Kuljit to present your sort of submissions and like evidence in chief, essentially, after we've finished questioning for Ms. Lee. So you've got plenty of opportunity, and you get to question everybody as well. So
thank you very much.
Okay, lovely. Do either Mr. Paul or Mr. Austin have any questions of fact for Ms. Lee?
There you go. Thank you also. So we're sorry that the incidents did happen, as they have happened. So obviously I've only joined in the last 2 weeks of the pub operating, and there's stuff prior to me joining that obviously I can apologise for, but there are issues we weren't aware of, like public urination. We're very glad that's been raised to our attention. We look to work with parties moving forward. But, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, we've only been open, roughly about 3 weeks, and we don't believe there was that much disturbance. And as it comes to the bit, I mean, our pub entrance is 50 feet from Melanie's.
Okay, I
on the
think I
front.
might potentially cut you off here, Mr. Austin, because I think that this sort of statement essentially is possibly going to be better when you give us your submissions. This is more an opportunity just to sort of ask any questions and clarify any of the issues that Ms. Lee's raised.
Yes, okay, we can do it later.
Okay, lovely, no worries. In which case, I shall ask the subcommittee members, do you have any questions for Ms. Lee?
Thank you, Chair. No, I haven't got any questions of Ms. Lee. I think present representation has been absolutely marvellous. And I've read, obviously, the documents with all the complaints, and she's not really left anything to question.
No, I would be minded to agree, but I see Councillor Thake. Do you have any questions?
No, Madam Chairman, I don't. That was a clear and unequivocal statement, and I don't think there are any questions that I do, any elements of it I do not understand.
Okay, can I just ask officers supporting us today, do we want to play or attempt to play the videos that Ms. Lee has submitted now so that Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin can see them?
Yes, if Ms. Lee thinks that's an appropriate time to do it, we can show those now. We've got photographs and a video.
Yeah, can I hand over to you to sort of technology that for me, please?
Yes, Chair William will put them up on the screen for us.
Can you all see this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have the titles to these pictures, so if Ms. Lee would like to walk us through them.
Yes, I'm sorry. I know it's very dark. It was from my window and I didn't want to actually get anybody into trouble, if you know what I mean. So, but as you can see, this is the road. And there was cars going past when this was taken. This was all the people spilling out onto the road after they'd been drinking. This was on, I don't know which night this was. It wasn't the night the police were called, though. It was another night. So endangering themselves and obviously being, I have to say, a public nuisance. That's what that one is. Blurry. Should have perhaps cleaned my window better. There we go. No, I don't. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I suppose that's just to show how close. Yeah, I don't. It's not very clear. That's just to sort of show how close the beer garden is to mine. Perhaps if you move on to the next one, I can't really describe that one to there. That's better. The table tennis table is my children's table. The slatted fence is the division. You can see the beer garden tables set within feet of the fence. Now, bear in mind that this beer garden area or this area goes right the way up to the adjoining property, which is the fire station. So and in fact the tables are placed almost outside where the house of multiple occupation or some of the tenants live. What I would ask is, would they please consider moving them further in this picture to the left, so then at least if people are going to go outside, they're not going to be right up against the fence. But what I was trying to show here, and I think probably the next one will be the same, it's just that there is nothing separating the beer garden and my garden. Hence, any noise is, we all have to live with noise. It's life. But noise of people screaming, shouting, swearing, fighting, throwing bottles, I don't think we should have to live with. Sorry. That's it, I think. And that's just more people on the road, as you can see. Yeah, that's it, I think.
I also have a video here.
Okay, there may also be language in this as well, so I'll apologise for
This
that.
might, sorry to interrupt, this might be the one you've heard, but anyway, carry on. This may not be like, I don't know. And there should be the video of the night the police arrived. Then you hear all the sirens. I think that's the only other one that's that needs playing. Oh, Have you got that?
That's the only video that I've.
Oh, shall I? I mean, I don't know if you want to hear it or not. It's like that one, only noisier, and you can hear sirens. I mean, I don't know if it's really going to make a massive difference. I can look for it later. I don't want to hold things up, but
that's fine. I will take as read, and obviously we have got other reports that gives us dates of incidents, so we're aware of the impact of various incidents on the neighbours.
Since the police were called, Madam Chairman, that's clearly a matter of public record anyway.
That is absolutely a matter of public record. So I think we can absolutely accept that as fact without needing to sort of find ways to make phone videos play over YouTube.
No, it was just the noise. Again, it was just the noise of all the people, and there was loads of people out on the street and across the road, and lots of young people, and it was really very worrying actually, because I could tell from some of the people the police were talking to. I hate to say it, but I know them. There were 16. I mean, I think half of Meridian was in there that night. I know they're going to put things in place to prevent that happening, but I'm telling you now, there were so many 16-year-olds in there, and they weren't being ID checked, no matter what may be said. I know these kids, and one of them spoke to me and said, no. But again, I think the police have addressed that in the conditions they wanted on the licence anyhow. So I'm not going to go on about that anymore.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that the impact and the issues that are occurring has been made adequately clear to me, certainly, from what Ms. Lee said and demonstrated. Given we've just sort of seen some additional evidence, do you members of the panel have any further questions based on that for Ms. Lee? I see no from Councillor Rice. And I'll take Councillor Lake's silence as a no as well. Okay, in which case I shall then move on and ask our responsible authorities, of which we only have Hertfordshire Constabulary today, to present their submissions to the subcommittee. If I could ask Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin to also mute, that would be helpful for clarity. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies. I've not done one of these meetings. Kolji, would you be able to look at the preparation, or you prepared this review of the premises license presentation? Would you be able to go through it, please?
Yeah, of course. I believe everyone's had the opportunity to read the report that I did put together. In relation to a number of incidences where police were called. As Miss Lee has said, mainly since they've reopened in October, that's when the incidences occurred where we were called. We've so far, looking at the report that I've got in front of me, so there was one incident there were two incidences on one night, which is Saturday, 24th of October. One was a call in relation to underage kids within the premises, drinking. Officers did attend, spoke to Mr. Austin on the night, and obviously went through a couple of checks with him. Spoke to some youngsters that were sitting watching the football, which was on. Only two were drinking. The other two didn't have any glasses in front of them. The two that did look young were actually spoken to and asked for ID. One actually produced ID on his phone, which we didn't think was acceptable. It could have been basically passed off as anyone. And then the other child, or the other person that was questioned, they didn't have any ID on him. Mr. Austin was spoken to. He said he's been asking for ID. He doesn't sell to underage drinkers, and necessary advice was given. And on the back of that, we then I obviously spoke to Mr. Austin, as that was the number that I was given. And discussed a number of issues around some of the logs that were coming in. And then we sort of came to agreement that the conditions that I've asked for as part of the review hearing, that those are the sort of conditions that he should be adopting as part of best practice. Mr. Austin did tell me that he was actually going to install CCTV, but whether that's happened or not, I do not know. Maybe perhaps that is a question we can ask Mr. Austin at a later date. So I do believe that the conditions that we have asked for will cover everything in terms of the reports that we've received so far and the concerns that Ms. Lee has actually put forward today. The only thing I would like potentially for the subcommittee to consider is the fact that with the open vessels being allowed to leave the premises, I didn't have the evidence in relation to that, but perhaps the committee could actually take that into consideration and add that as a condition as well, that no open vessels are permitted to leave the premises at any time. I don't think I've got anything else to add, John.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Colgit. No, there's nothing really more to add. I think we've all seen the details of the actual incidents and that police attended. Yes, the only thing I would add in the CCTV is not to. It says that we've asked for CCTV to be installed. I would ask for that to actually state CCTV to be installed prior to the premises reopening. Put an actual date on it, because I don't want this left as an open. I don't want this pub to open again without CCTV.
Okay, thank you very much. You shall have to excuse me being slow at unmuting sometimes. I take notes. Excellent. So, could we ask if there are any questions for the police from first Ms. Lee?
Just one. Do you believe that having CCTV alone and no requirement for door supervisors or stewards is adequate to prevent any further antisocial behaviour? And similarly, do you believe, you've said you haven't asked for any more conditions, do you believe that the beer garden should remain licensed until 11 p.m. and with people therefore out in the open, spilling out from the pub? You've said that you think CCTV is sufficient. I understand that for looking into crime and so on in the future, but I'm not convinced that lack of door supervision and allowing the pub premises and the outside area to be licensed until 11 o'clock is sufficient to address the antisocial behaviour and also the crime and disorder, because in fact the fight that started as they were going out into the beer garden. Long question, but do you think that's adequate, please?
I'll deal with the first bit first, and no, I don't think CCTV would stop the problems, but it does give us a starter for 10 when it comes to investigating, and hopefully would ensure that all the other conditions are obliged by the premises supervisors, because obviously then we can see if they are taking the correct action that has been set out in the licence. The idea about the licensing of the premises, that would be a matter for the council to discuss. I would support absolutely that there's a limit put on the amount of time the drinking could be carried out in the garden, but that would be a matter for the councillors to determine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, can I ask whether Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin have any questions for the police?
Yeah, we're going to move our pub benches further down the garden. We're just preparing the area, which is about 50 foot away from where they are now.
Okay. Can I just double check, is this a question or is it a statement of something that might sit better in your submissions? Yeah. I think
quick question.
Points like that, string them all together for me, Mr. Austin, when you do your submissions and you explain to us how you're going to be managing the pub, because I think it's going to be more helpful for the committee if we get all of that information together at the same time. Mr. Paul, do you have like a question of fact for the police?
One quick question about the CCTV. Is it better to have like the TV to monitor the cameras, the big hard drives, that sort of stuff in a secure area? Is that the best option? Because I've seen multiple systems use like they don't have a TV, all that sort of stuff.
I think that's something that you guys can deal with offline, sort of depending on what conditions, if we decide to go for conditions or whatever we decide to do with the license, but it sits better in it offline as opposed to a question of fact about like the stuff that the police have said or the potential conditions that they might be asking us to introduce. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, so members of the subcommittee, do you have any questions?
Not from me, Madam Chair, quite clear. And I absolutely agree that I think these issues that we're raising need to be dealt with as part and parcel of our deliberations, so that and we can then ask officers to ensure that they're, whatever conditions we do or might decide are properly inscribed and then can be agreed. Otherwise, this meeting will go on and on and on.
That's absolutely right. It's just to sort of stroke Mr. Paul's ego a little bit. It is nice to see that you're willing to engage. That's not necessarily going to play any role in the decision that we make, but it's good to see somebody positively seeking to make improvements. Councillor Rice, did you have any questions?
No, I've no questions of fact, Chairman. I've read the police reports and I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, and I'm also happy. I will say, just for reference, Mr. Vine, this is quite an easy police presentation as far as these subcommittees can go. But your colleagues will certainly be able to sort of help support you with future ones. I think you and Colgate have done well in presenting the case today from the constabulary. Thank you very much. Okay, we have no licence holder or designated premises supervisor, unfortunately, which does make things difficult, such as discussing whether conditions that have been put forward might be accepted and making our lives a little bit easier as a subcommittee. But what we do have are two individuals in the form of Mr. Paul, who's been described as the bar manager, and Mr. Austin, who, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what your role at the pub is, who can give us some insight into the potential management at present or over the period that's led to this review application. We will essentially treat this the same way as we would treat sort of people who supported a pub trying to speak on its behalf in the community sense of it, rather than treating you as license holders, because we can't at this time. So if you want to sort of make submissions to the committee, maybe sort of explain some of the things that Mr. Austin was starting to try and draw out when I cut him off and said, no, that's a statement, not a question. That would be great.
Sorry? Just need to explain the situation about what's happened and the issues that we had.
Yeah, like when we reopen, we're going to have a new DPS taking the role. And what's that?
About the ID issue, taking the photo of a passport.
What's that?
Remember that incident we had with the photo of the passport?
We've changed our policy to 25s and over.
We're no longer taking the pass certificate, because I've seen a lot of them that are fake from previous places I've worked at. So we're going to refuse taking that, only taking the provisional driver's license and the passport in proper form. So we're going to look at moving the beer garden back as well, as Sydney said, because we do have a massive grass area right at the rear of our property, which I think would begin to justify like having that area in use, because it is away from residential areas. But again,
and it's a fenced off area with a 6-foot fence, so the seating will be behind the fence. There shouldn't be no contact at all.
It should be quite quiet. It is quite distance away. But what else?
So it's right at the end of Melanie's garden.
I'm going to be placing myself on the doors at the end of nights as well, because end of the day, door supervision is very expensive. We can look at it. Obviously, it would be best to get it in, but I'm more than happy to stand out there myself and mitigate the control of it. What else? Changing the DPS. CCTV system.
Yeah.
We're still in the process of trying to find an appropriate system, because we want to get a 16 camera system.
Yeah, 16 cameras.
Because we want to cover the front of the property, the inside of the property, and the rear of the property, so we can see if something has gone wrong. We can hand it over to the police or.
We've got 2 cameras on the front, 2 in the garden, and the rest inside the premises.
Is there anything else? Oh, the signs.
putting
I don't
up
know if you can
signs.
see all these, the under 25s, the policy. We're bringing that in currently. We've got the refusal log and the incident book in place as well. So we're making steps to correct some of the wrongs. We do apologise for the incidents that have happened as well, because it's always best to. I've only been here for 2 weeks, so but yeah. Anything else? I can't think of.
We're also going to put signs up on the doors to say, you know, please be quiet as you leave the pub.
Oh, the car park. Do you want to mention anything about the car park?
About the car park.
But the HMO is using it.
So no complaints about it.
No, we're good. I think that's it.
That's it.
Okay, lovely. So I think what we've heard there then is sort of a list of things that I guess we can call them current management are intending to do, to put in place to mitigate some of the issues that have been experienced at the pub. And we're aware that Mr. Paul has only been at the Jockey for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks until the lockdown back in November.
Yeah.
Okay, so
sorry, basically the pub's only been open for like just over 3 weeks, between the hours of 5 in the evening till 10 at night.
Yeah,
you know, it hasn't been open that long.
okay, and just for the committee's reference, I'm being really cheeky and stealing a question, but I think it'd be helpful to clarify before we go around to the usual rounds. Mr. Paul, can you give me your start date at the pub?
I believe it was 22nd of October.
22nd of October, yeah, because you kept saying 2 weeks, and that was confusing. I was thinking he's only been there since the beginning of January, so he wasn't involved in these issues, but you were there when these issues were occurring.
Yeah,
okay.
I was very new to it.
Okay, no worries. In that case, I shall do the usual round of questioning, starting with Ms. Lee. Do you have questions of fact for Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin?
Yes, not many though. Mr. Paul, were you the bar manager on the nights of the 23rd and the 24th of October?
Yes, I was.
No, Sydney was the bar manager. I was intended to take over as bar manager near the end of November.
So were you present on those nights?
I was bartender, yes.
You were the bartender. Sorry, you were the bar. So you and Sydney were present on those nights. Okay. Did you have any notices up asking people to leave the premises quietly?
Not at the time, no.
Did you make any attempt to prevent people from leaving the front of the pub and standing in the street drinking?
We did attempt to move people on.
Did you succeed?
It was quite difficult.
Did you observe people standing in doorways of nearby houses and under the windows of nearby houses?
I didn't see anyone standing in doorways. I know obviously they're in the roadways, so they're going to be outside windows, but I didn't see anyone in doorways at all.
Did you do anything?
There's other pubs in the area, not just our pub. There's about 4 or 5 other bars. It doesn't mean
with respect, Mr. Austin, can I just ask this? I just want to ask these questions. I know there's other pubs in the area. The people standing in the middle of the A505 and outside my house. Okay, I can ask you a question. Do you think they had come from other pubs?
Yeah, but
I'm going to be really horrible and say you don't have to answer that, Mr. Austin, at this time. I don't see how you could possibly have that knowledge. It's a very
I ask it to show that he'd raised it and it's irrelevant. So thank you for making that point. So did you actually attempt to do anything to prevent the people from making the noise outside the pub when they were being collected in cars? Did you do anything to tell people if they were to be collected to use your car park?
The parking outside, anybody who's got a taxi can park outside in the road.
Why don't you use your car park? Why don't you let your patrons use your car park?
Because we don't encourage drinking and driving.
But you've just said they can park outside to pick people up.
No, I said it's legal to park outside.
The people collecting your patrons, why don't you allow them to use your car park?
We don't encourage drinking and driving. We don't encourage people to put their cars into our pub.
The car park is mainly for...
I'm not talking about the patrons. I'm talking about the people collecting the patrons. Why don't you allow them to use the pub car park to collect the patrons?
We don't encourage drinking and driving. We don't encourage people to put their cars into our pub. The car park is mainly for...
I'm not talking about the patrons. I'm talking about the people collecting the patrons. Why don't you allow them to use the pub car park to collect the patrons?
The car
I
primarily
just said we don't allow our car park to be used.
the rear car park behind the gate is primarily used by the HMO tenants. There's a couple of the tenants that have a parking spot
On the nights in question, did the HMO tenants move their cars outside onto the road, including the valeting van?
No, we don't allow vans, big vans inside our car park.
But they're allowed on the road outside of people's houses next door, aren't they?
I kind of feel that this is descending into argument and potentially misunderstanding, so I'm going to kill this line of questioning. I think I take the point that you're making about the use of the car park, though, so thank you.
The only point I'm trying to make, Anna, is if they have a car park, why do they encourage people to use the road where other people's doors and windows are? And this is the point of the noise. So I think an easy way around it would be to allow people to use the car park. That's the only point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and I think that sort of feeds into public nuisance considerations, and we've got specific things that we can and cannot consider when it comes down to licensing, but we've heard what you say.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other questions for Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin?
Well, just arising from what they said about using the rear of the beer garden. So you're talking about how would they get to the rear? They'd walk out of the back of the pub, they'd then walk 50 feet to go through a fence to go onto the field, and that's where the tables would be. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's about quite the end of the garden. Yeah, no, we've got a new area built, grassed area. We're going to put our tables up there out of the way.
And that's not parallel to my garden at all?
It's well past the end of your garden.
So they'd have to walk 50 feet to get there. How would they carry their drinks?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. And also, finally, about that point, are you going to allow people to carry out vertical drinking in the licensed area at the back of the pub? Because that's when they stand next to the fence and drink next to my garden. Are you going to allow that, or are you going to prevent that?
We can encourage them to move into the fenced area. We can do that quite easily, but obviously the best thing to do is just kill the area at 9 o'clock, lock the back door. Anyone wants to smoke can smoke out front, and we'll take drinks off them. But it's just managing that.
So they'll be smoking out of the front instead of out of the back? On the road, you mean? On the pavement?
We can add an enclosed area onto the back just to allow for smokers. We can look at doing that, because we can look at putting up perspex screens on the rear little porch on the right and the back of the property.
That's next to my conservatory, yeah? That's going to be the smoking area.
We can try and look at a different way.
Yeah. Could you please consider using the far right-hand side of the property where you park your cars? Because you do have all that space too. And that would keep all the smoke and the noise away from everybody, wouldn't it?
Yeah. We can try, yeah.
I think Ms. Lee's given you some things to think about from a management perspective, depending on what happens at this committee today. Was that the end of your sort of questions, Ms. Lee?
I think it should be, don't you? Thank you.
Say that right. Lovely. So in that case, do Hertfordshire Constabulary have any questions for Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin?
I'm afraid I do. Mr. Austin, it's John Bynum, the local police sergeant. I know the Jockey Pub from many years ago. I know what it used to be, but obviously it closed down for a number of years. What do you intend the premises to look like, your business? It used to be quite a sleepy pub where people went for a pint after work. What is the plan? Is it going to be a pub with high turnover of patrons, or is it going to be a sleepy place? Is it going to have music? Do you plan events? I just want to know more what your business model would look like.
Relaxed sports pub.
It's just going to be a pub for middle-aged people showing football, live football, and over 25 policy. And just a nice pub. It's got a big following on Facebook now. Everybody wants to see it open.
It wants to be a relaxed place where people can come for a quiet beer.
Let's just have a quiet beer, no music, and just relax.
Okay. Some of the biggest problems we've had with licensing in Royston over the years have been related to the sporting events, such as World Cups, Euros, all that kind of stuff. You would get a massive increase in customers if you were showing those events. would it be something we could consider to put additional support staff and maybe door staff on if you were going to be showing licensing?
We don't like the major cup stuff, like the really big cup stuff. We don't steer away from completely.
We're totally against big events. We just want to run a quiet pub.
We don't want to hold any of the massive cup games because I've worked at pubs like that. They did that before, and it's just pandemonium. It's just madness. So we just want to show the minor league cups, the rugby and stuff like that. Avoid all the really big ticket stuff because that just brings in crowds of people we don't really want.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Look at, if we do bigger events, we can look at door staff and increasing staff on site.
We don't want any trouble at all. Yeah, we want to keep the pub quiet, but we own the pub freehold, so we don't need to, have a massive turnover.
Okay, thank you for that.
Basically, it's rent free.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to assume, Kuljit, that John had all of the questions that the police had.
Just one question for Mr. Austin. Are you able to confirm what your actual position is in relation to the pub? Is it just managing, or do you have a stakehold in the business?
No, I'm the business owner, the pub business owner.
So is it just you that there's a business owner, or those that are
of the pub?
Mrs.
Not
License?
of the building. I'm the sole owner of the business.
So you're the sole owner of
Jockey in Liverpool.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we did lose your connection a tiny bit there. So could you just sort of go back and clarify exactly what your relationship is, bearing in mind that we've got a different license holder as a limited company?
Yeah, because my partner is the owner of the building and the DPS, PIMV for staff, the current DPS, yeah. The license.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's
I
it.
was absolutely paying attention. I'm just writing that down because I want us to be clear. So your partner owns the building and is current DPS.
Yeah, but what we're going to do, we're going to change the DPS to Kieran eventually.
Okay.
So we'll have a DPS on the premises all the time.
Okay. And just so that I know, the current DPS is Kushamal, and that's your partner.
PIMV for staff.
Okay. Okay. Is that everything you needed, Kuljit?
That's all, thank you.
Okay, lovely. Yeah. And do members of the panel have questions for Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin?
Yes, Chair. Before we continue with questions, could I just ask our licensing officer, Molly, who is actually listed as the DPS for the property at the moment?
Oh, I think you can hear me, but you can't see me. Yes, just bear with me 1 second, Councillor. So the current DPS is, oh, sorry, bear with me. So the current DPS is Kushmal Chiblam.
Okay, is that your partner, Mr. Austin?
No, that's
okay.
that's the previous DPS.
Okay, that's fine. We've got an answer. We can deal with this with officers. I think we've got something that we need to discuss offline with them. Did you have any further questions, Mr. Rice? Mr. Rice,
yes.
Councillor Rice.
Yeah, oh, very officious today. So actually, there's no DPS for this pub at the moment. Is that correct?
We've, like I said, my partner's owned the pub for 10 years. She is the DPS in Viva Start. Maybe
No, she's
it's got
not.
more records.
No, she's not. As far as our licensing
She
records
is
are concerned, she's not.
I think we've got a dispute over the facts, and we've got the facts as this licensing authority knows them, and the facts as Mr. Austin perceives them to be. We can only go with what we have in terms of our licensing paperwork, unfortunately, and we will deal with this in deliberation, I think, colleagues.
Yeah. So let me just clarify, just so I've got it straight in my mind, and I apologise if I haven't taken it all in when I should have done. But you, Mr. Austin, are in partnership with Pinvipa Stark of Yindi Thai Limited, and the two of you own the premises, and
No.
Pinvipa Stark has got the license.
No, my partner, Pinvipa Start, is the owner of the building and also the premises license holder and a DPS. I'm her partner. That's my relationship with her.
I know it's happening. I figured it out. We've got the license holder, but the DPS is listed as different, but your partner is actually the license holder, which sits kind of
And also
above
the
the
license holder
DPS.
as well.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad we've clarified that. Are you happy, Mike?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, questions?
Okay. So understand now who's managing, right? Where the ownership lies. Have you had a lot of experience with managing pubs or running pubs?
Yes, quite a few, yeah.
Tell me then, if that's the case, why is it that there was no refusals book? Why were you not running any Challenge 25 or Challenge 21 at the time of all these problems? No incident book when the police asked to view an incident book. I mean, those two items are quite important for people running a pub, refusals book and an incident book. Why were you allowing people to leave the pub with open drinks out onto the street, which is the A505? So could you explain to me, if you have this history of running a pub, why you were allowing these things to happen?
We'd only been open a few weeks, and we was waiting for the signage and the book to come. And also, we've got the book now, but also we wasn't serving drinks opened, and we wasn't allowing people to leave the pub with drinks.
Okay, so nobody was drinking outside the premises?
No.
Not as far as you're aware?
Why would they be drinking out? They'd be drinking in our beer garden for a start. No one would ever drink on the A505. It's a very busy road.
It's an understatement.
We've got a proper beer garden with seating in at the back. You know, I can't see why they want to drink out like that, and we don't allow unopened bottles to go outside the pub like that.
If any did manage to get out, we do. If any did manage to get out, of course we apologise for it, but it was just something we obviously missed.
And most of our sales is draft beer in glasses, not bottle beer.
I think it just comes to getting someone on the door when we're closing, just someone to
but like I
out
said,
on the pavement to make sure that none of this happens.
We wasn't particularly busy, to be honest with you. You know, we've only just barely ticking over since we opened.
Right.
So we've never had massive crowds, nothing like that.
You've obviously read the documentation pack, and you can see what the police are asking for as far as the licence is concerned. Are you happy with all the things that they've listed?
He can't commit to that, Mike, because he's not listed on the licence. we would need either a director of the license holder or the DSP to, well, the license holder has to accept it really. All we can get is a commitment that they're going to manage the pub in a particular way, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
That's not very satisfactory then, is it?
No.
Chair.
That's why it would have been really helpful, in my opinion, if the license holder had been here today. But we've got what we've got, and at least Mr. Austin and Mr. Paul are attending to give us some information.
I'm sorry about the license holder not being here, but she's had to leave the country for some family business, and she won't be back until March. You know.
See, the thing that concerns me, Chair, is anything that we would want on the licence, we're in a situation whereby we can't do anything about it because there's no licence.
And that's
Licence
something for us
holder
to discuss, I think, when
to
we're having
agree
our
with.
deliberations.
Yeah. Anything you want on the licence, I will get her to agree with you. No problem.
As a woman, I'm not necessarily confident in a husband saying that sort of thing. I shall be ever so
Madam
ever so
Chairman,
modest
stop
with
it.
you, Mr. Austin. But also
Stop it.
from a procedural perspective, with the utmost
Stop.
respect, I know you're trying your best to run this pub, but we can't accept management telling us what the license holder may or may not agree to, irrespective of what their personal relationship is.
Madam
Just-
Chairman, we
just
have the
because-
mechanism to deal with this.
I think we absolutely do, and it's our deliberations.
Yeah, I'm sorry to
isn't
jump
it?
in, but we do have the mechanism to deal with this as part and parcel of the committee's deliberations.
With
Quite
that in
honest-
mind, I've
quite
got
honestly,
no more questions
You don't. Oh, that's
because-
wonderful, Councillor Rice. Thank
because
you.
I'm not going to get the answers.
You won't, because I think you were going into dangerous territory. But thank you very much for your clarification that you've managed to pull out. Councillor Stake.
no,
Before we
Madam
move
Chairman,
on-
I've no further questions of fact because I think Mike and yourself and the little informal discussion we had has clearly illustrated the problems we as a committee have got in dealing with this as perhaps we might like. I mean, clearly I don't want to preempt anything. I think this is a discussion we need to have when we go into our camera part, once the applicants have left. I think there are mechanisms to deal with this. I do not see any point in proceeding with further questions, given the facts that you've laid out in terms of the capacities here.
Thank you very much. I am equally so minded. I think there were some points I needed clarification on, and I think that those have come out in the discussion that we've had. And I thank both Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin for their presence and for the information that they've provided this subcommittee with. Okay, so moving on then, that is the end of all of the submissions that we have today. So if I could ask for closing statements, I will take our licensing officer first. Whenever the licensing officer is ready. There she is.
Sorry, I've had to just move my camera and I'm trying to look at a computer as well. So bear with me while I'm looking away from the camera.
That's all right, take your time.
So thank you, Chair. So it is quite a lengthy closing statement, so please bear with me. So I'd like to respectfully remind the subcommittee that the premises licence holder is not present and that Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin's commitments would not be binding. Therefore, serious consideration should be given to the ability of the licence holder and the DPS to ensure future licence compliance. As an example, mention has been made to adding a new DPS. However, only the licence holder, which is Yindi Thai Limited, could make that application. Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin have not fully explained the role of the current premises licence holder and are not in a position to agree to conditions on their behalf. Information has been raised today about Mr. Austin's position that is different to responses previously given by him to me. More concerning, the listed legal DPS is not recognised by Mr. Austin. Therefore, I have serious reservations about the ability to manage this premises. All licences contain a mandatory condition requiring a premises licence holder to have an age verification policy. So it is concerning that discussions have taken place about what measures they propose to take to address underage drinking. There is a right of appeal against the subcommittee's decision to all parties to the hearing. Any appeal would be dealt with by the Magistrates Court, which for this area is Stevenage Magistrates. An application for appeal should be lodged with the Clerk to the Magistrates no later than 21 days after receiving the Council's decision, accompanied by reasons for the appeal and the appeal fee. Today's decision does not take effect until the end period for the review, or if an appeal is lodged, until the appeal has been disposed of. The Council would be unable to advise on any appeal, as it would be the respondent to the appeal hearing. As always, there is a right of review against any existing premises licence in relation to matters arising at the premises in relation to the licensing objective. Repetitious reviews are not permitted from other persons, and may further requests for a review should focus predominantly on matters arising after today's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molly. Okay, so if I can then take closing statements from Hertfordshire Constabulary, please.
Yes, thank you. I think overall, I think most things have been discussed, and personally, from the Sergeant of Royston, I really am happy with the way licensing is in Royston at the moment, and the professionalism of it, the structure of it. It's causing us very few. I know the pubs are closed, but even when they're open, it causes us very few problems in 2021. And I really want it to stay that way. I can't afford to have a pub spring up, and it really is almost a new pub springing up here that isn't run in the same professional way as the others are. I don't have the resources these days to police problematic pubs, and I would like to ask the council to do everything in their power to ensure that doesn't occur. I'm really disappointed that the DPS and the licence holder haven't made themselves available, and I accept that someone's had to go out of the country, but it's unlikely they don't have access to the internet, and that does worry me that person hasn't decided to turn up today. One of the issues we've got in Royston currently is the lack of provision for 16 to 17-year-olds. Youth clubs and everything else is closed down, and I don't want any pub to start becoming the pseudo youth club and all the problems that come with it. I understand that you're trying to look at a 16 camera system, and that's commendable, but these things come at a huge price, and you are a fledgling business, and I'm really concerned that we get that system in place. And I would actually ask if there's any need to see if there's financial resources available to actually install that system before you open, because it's very easy to say that you're going to get it in, but I need to know that you have the resources to do that. Other than that, I think everything else has been covered.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I don't know if Colgate also has a separate closing statement, or if John essentially speaks for the whole of Herts Constabulary.
John speaks for the whole of Constabulary.
Okay. On this matter at any rate.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, excellent. In which case I shall ask Ms. Lee to make her final submission. Just a sort of note to Ms. Lee and Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin. View this kind of like as your final summing up of your case. Try not to sort of introduce arguments or tit for tat based on what you've heard. Just sort of, this is your lasting impression to this subcommittee. This is the last thing you want us to be thinking of when we go into our deliberations. Okay?
No pressure then, huh? Well, first of all, I'd like to endorse everything that Officer Vine said, and also to repeat what I said initially, which is I am not against licensed premises in Royston, or even living next door to one, but I want it to be an asset to the community, not a drain on the community. I also would appreciate the owners, DPS, making contact with their community and the local residents when they're planning on opening or closing pubs, and making changes. And I accept what the owners have said about moving the beer garden to the very end of their premises. This doesn't address, however, the noise spilling out onto the road and the cars and so on. So I'd ask them, as they've indicated they may do, to always ask their patrons to respect the local area, not to park their cars under people's windows, beeping, shouting, screaming, swearing. Similarly with the lighting, to dim the lighting. And the final thing is, it may be these people actually who appear today for the pub can't actually agree to do anything going forward because they're not the DPS. So I reiterate what everyone else has said. It's a shame the DPS isn't here. I've never seen this lady myself, I don't believe. Obviously, she's abroad at the moment. But going forward, they were allowed, or they managed to open the pub unexpectedly for 3 weeks with no notice to anybody. I'm really worried that no matter what happens today, that will happen again. I don't want that to happen again because it's horrible for me and my family and my neighbours. And I agree, places like Wetherspoons, the Jolly Posty, properly run door supervision. And they're the places that often get a bad reputation nationally, certainly Wetherspoons. But believe you me, the Jockey was infinitely worse, no matter what they say on those nights and nearly on many of the nights when it was open. And I don't want it just springing up again, taking us all by surprise and doling out misery for those in the community. So please do what you can, not just today, but going forward, to make sure that me and my children can sleep at night without worrying, and my neighbours similarly. That's what I would ask the committee. Thank you very much for listening.
Excellent, thank you very much. And finally, if I could have submissions, 5 closing submissions from Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin.
Yeah. Just closing notes, just your submissions at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, any recommendations, we will 100%, apply it.
We can't because we're not.
No, but I'm saying I'll get permission from the license holders to.
Doesn't matter. It's got to be the license holder. We can take their considerations moving forward if the license is obviously revoked, and we apply for ourselves. We can take those recommendations forward. Like everything in the police report is amazing. It all makes perfect sense. It should be there anyway. Like we know that we're moving forward with some of the bits. All we can do is apologise for issues that have happened. We do intend, if we do get past this, if we do manage to open it back up as a pub, to get the neighbours' background, show them the improvements we intend to make or have made, and hopefully move forward on friendlier grounds. But yeah, that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Paul. That was helpful. I'm assuming that is that everything, or does Mr. Austin have a short closing submission?
Anything else? No, all good.
Satisfied. Okay, lovely. In which case, I need to ask the legal advisor to summarise any legal points which have arisen during the course of the hearing, and also to take any questions on law that the committee might have.
Yes, the options available to the panel are outlined in paragraph 5.3 of the officer's report. The issues, I agree with the licensing officer in her representations regarding the issues over the DPS and premises license holder, that it would be though it's not, the conditions would not be able to be agreed on the license without they are the people to agree any license conditions. And that is one of the issues that it forms a major part of the panel's deliberations, I would say. As I say, the paragraphs, the options available are to take no action. Conditions, modified conditions, obviously that's difficult there's no DPS present to consent to adding additional conditions. Excluding a licence activity, removing the DPS, or suspending the licence for 3 months, or revoking the premises licence. As I say, I fully agree with the points that are raised by the licensing officer in this case. In making a decision, members have to consider all the information they have before it regarding from the parties that have participated in this hearing, and consider the council's licensing policy considerations. And its like statement of licence 2021 and the statutory guidance. 4 reasons have to be given for the panel's decision, as there is a right of appeal to the magistrates' court. And that's all I'd like to say, unless there's anything else that anyone wants me to address.
Okay, so did either Councillor Rice or Councillor Fake have any questions for our legal advisor? I see a no and 2 no's. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Teresa. Right, so what we're going to do now is retire to reach our decision. I don't know at this time how long it's going to take, but I'd like to thank the committee and our member and invite our committee member and scrutiny officer to explain the next part of the process to everyone.
Thank you, Chair. As you just said, the subcommittee will be retiring to make a decision in private now. Public viewing the meeting, including everybody here at the Zoom meeting, are welcome to wait to listen to the decision. However, this may take some time. Once the subcommittee has made its decision, this will be announced at the Zoom meeting on the YouTube live stream. If members believe that the decision will take too long, to avoid parties waiting, they may decide not to announce the decision live today. If this is the case, an announcement will be made to this effect by the subcommittee and the meeting will be closed. The decision would then be announced in writing within 5 working days of the meeting. So the panel will now retire to make the decision. Thank you, everybody. If you'd like to turn off your cameras and mute your microphones, please. Thank you.
Right, just have a quick look. Have we got? I think we have got all members.
I think
I
we're all back.
can see names of people as well, so I'm assuming that they're within close reach of the relevant screens. Do we need William to start the YouTube thing?
No, that's been running throughout, Chair, so
Oh.
you can just carry on and announce the decision.
Great. Lovely. All right then. I don't know if Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin are going to turn their camera on, but I can see that they are at least logged into the meeting, so I'll assume that they can hear. All right, thank you very much for your patience, everyone, while we were considering our decision. I'll read out the decision notice, and it will be published by officers at some point, hopefully not too long. So this is a hearing on the 19th of January 2021. The members of the panel were myself, Councillor Elizabeth Dennis-Harburg, Councillor Mike Rice, and Councillor Richard Thake. It was in respect of the premises licence held by Yindi Thai Limited, and the premises address is The Jockey, Baldock Street, Royston, Hertfordshire, SG8 5BD. The date of the application was the 23rd of November 2020, and this is an application for review of a premises licence under Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003. The subcommittee has read the material presented to it and has listened to all the evidence and submissions. The subcommittee has considered the national guidance and the statement of licensing policy and has come to the following decision. The subcommittee has decided to revoke the premises licence as it believes no amendments or conditions can adequately address the issues at the premises in relation to the licensing objectives. There's a number of sections that we would usually set out potential amended licensing points, but none of them are going to be applicable given that we're revoking. We've considered the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, which is the April 2017 version, in reaching our decision, and we have found that a number of sections of the Act are relevant. I'm not going to read them out now. It's a list of section letters and numbers, but they will be in the published report. Equally, we've considered North Herts District Council statement of licensing policy in reaching our decision. And again, we list the relevant sections in the decision notice for reference. Rationale for decision. The subcommittee has concerns about how the licensed premises is being run, as there appears to be no DPS or licence holder actively managing the premises. The subcommittee was concerned that the current management of the premises was confused about who the DPS was, and there has been no application to transfer the premises licence to a new DPS at this point in time. The subcommittee also noted that although the management were willing to accept a number of conditions, that the management of the Jockey, in the form of Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin, were willing to accept a number of conditions raised by the police, and they've shown that they're trying to do new things. No conditions could actually be made on the licence today or could be accepted because the licence holder and DPS are not present here, and therefore they cannot properly agree to them, and no properly delegated authority to make decisions has been given to Mr. Paul and Mr. Austin. It's been a difficult decision in some ways, as I'm sure those that have observed the hearing will appreciate, because despite best efforts, I believe, of our licensing officers, we could not reach and get the licence holder or the designated premises supervisor to attend this particular hearing. And unless we have trust and confidence that any conditions that we impose on a licence are going to be applied and can be enforced against a licence holder that we can track and hold to account, it seems pointless to us as a committee to impose those. It made more sense in our mind, therefore, to revoke the licence. And of course, at some point in the future, perhaps a new licence application could be made, or a new designated premises supervisor might put themselves forward. It would have been beneficial had the licence holder or DPS attended today. So the commencement date, this decision will come into effect from the end of the period for appealing the decision, or if the decision is appealed, the point at which the appeal has been dealt with by the magistrate's court. I have a rights of review box which says not applicable because the license has been revoked. All right, so that's that. Officers, I'm sure, will try and get the decision notice online as quickly as is practically possible. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance and your time today. Have a good rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair. William, could you end the live stream now, please?